The polished obsidian floor of the Drokar Bridge reflected the distant, swirling nebulae outside the primary view screen, a cosmic canvas that only emphasized the insignificance of the lone human figure standing before Commander Vurak 10. Celine Lune Kale, ambassador plenipotentiary of the Terran Confederacy, wore a simple, charcoal-gray diplomatic tunic, its fabric designed to absorb the invasive bioscans that permeated the Drokar vessel. The devourer of stars, it offered no comfort against the chill that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the palpable, ancient power emanating from the beings surrounding her. The Drokar were formidable. Their frames, towering over Selene by nearly a meter, were encased in segmented, chitinous armor that shimmered with integrated energy conduits. Their primary limbs ended in triple-clawed manipulators, capable of rending plasteel or performing intricate surgical procedures with equal ease. But it was their heads that truly held the gaze. Elongated, predatory visages dominated by four luminous, multifaceted eyes that shifted between amber and emerald, betraying an intellect that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across the spiral arm. Their voices, when they chose to articulate, resonated with a deep, grinding hum that vibrated through the very deck plates. Commander Vurak 10, positioned at the center of the command hololithic, was the largest of them. His armor etched with symbols of conquest and countless campaigns. He stood motionless, his quadruple eyes fixed on Selene, a silent judgment that stretched the silence taut. Around him, his bridge crew, a dozen hulking Drokar, continued their silent, efficient operations, their segmented limbs gliding across control interfaces, displaying no more interest in the human than in a discarded data shard. Finally, Vurak 10 moved, a slow, deliberate shift that felt like the grinding of tectonic plates. His voice, a low rumble that contained a surprising, almost physical weight, filled the cavernous bridge. It wasn't a question, but a statement, an observation steeped in millennia of unchallenged dominance. "We have analyzed your species, Terran. Your history is replete with conflict, your technology, rudimentary in comparison to even our lesser protectorates. Your defenses are frankly quaint. We could erase your primary star system from existence with a single volley. Your entire civilization, your planetary networks, your nascent colonies, all dust in the cosmic wind." The hololithic table before them flickered, displaying chillingly precise projections, Earth's continents dissolving into superheated vapor, Mars cracking open like an egg, the delicate orbital habitats around Jupiter blossoming into fiery supernovas. The simulations were so vivid, so cold in their calculated destruction, that a lesser being would have crumpled, screamed, or at least trembled. Vurak 10's gaze intensified, his four eyes boring into Selene's single pair. The hum of his voice dropped, becoming a low, resonant growl that seemed to vibrate directly within her chest cavity, a sound designed to bypass the ears and go straight for the fear centers of the brain. "We could end you right now. Why aren't you scared?" His voice cut through her soul, not with malice, but with genuine, unadulterated curiosity. It was the query of a being utterly devoid of an understanding of the phenomenon before him. Every species they had encountered, from the crystalline Zelos to the gaseous nebulons, had reacted with predictable terror, with pleas, with desperate last-ditch defiance that always ended in futility. But Selene Kale the human merely stood, her posture relaxed, her hands clasped loosely behind her back. A faint, almost imperceptible curve touched the corner of her lips, a ghost of a smile. Not one of arrogance, but of something far more unsettling. Selene inhaled slowly, the air on the Drokar Bridge, acrid with the faint scent of ozone and something metallic, filling her lungs. She held Vurak 10's multifaceted gaze without flinching. She knew this moment. She had trained for it, dreamt of it, rehearsed it 1,000 times in the sterile, low-gravity chambers of the Diplomatic Corps' Deep Space Protocol Station. This was the moment of revelation, the first true test of humanity's unconventional weapon. "Scared?" Selene's voice was soft, melodic, a stark contrast to Vurak 10's resonant growl. Yet, it carried a surprising clarity, effortlessly cutting through the hum of the Drokar's ship and the low-frequency thrum of Vorak 10's own voice. Commander, fear is a tool, a warning system. It tells us when to run, when to fight, when to adapt. But what if there's nowhere to run? What if fighting means certain obliteration? What then? Vorak 10 tilted his head, a gesture that for a Drokar signified intense focus, bordering on confusion. Then, he rumbled, one submits, or perishes. These are the only logical conclusions. Celine shook her head, the faint smile deepening. For you, perhaps. For the Drokar, with your millennia of unbroken dominion, your perfect logical constructs of power and consequence. But humanity? We are not logical in the same way. We are, by your metrics, gloriously, infuriatingly illogical. She took a single step forward, a small, almost imperceptible movement that nonetheless drew the full, undivided attention of the Drokar commander. You see our history as conflict. We see it as persistent adaptation. You see our technology as rudimentary. We see it as a stepping stone, built on rapid iteration, on learning from every failure, every setback. Your simulations of our destruction, Commander, are precise. They are even, dare I say, beautiful in their efficiency. Selene gestured towards the still flickering hololithic display of planetary annihilation. But they are also incomplete. Vorak 10's mandibles, hidden beneath his armored chin, clicked audibly, a sign of agitation. Incomplete? The eradication of your primary population centers, the disruption of your stellar infrastructure, these are definitive. What could possibly be missing from the equation of total victory? The aftermath, Selena stated simply. You calculate the energy required to boil oceans, to shatter continents. You calculate the trajectory of your warheads, the collapse of our defensive grids. But you fail to calculate the human element after such an event. What happens when the dust settles, when the last communication channel goes silent, when your sensors detect only radioactive debris? She paused, allowing the silence to stretch, for the sheer audacity of her words to sink in. The Drokar around them remained impassive, but she could feel the subtle shift in the ship's ambient energy fields, the microscopic adjustments of their monitoring apparatus. They were listening, truly listening, for the first time. You see a species facing extinction and you expect terror, despair, Selena continued, her voice gaining a subtle strength. What you fail to grasp is that for humanity, extinction is not the end of the narrative. It's merely another plot twist. We have faced it before, on our own homeworld, countless times. Plagues that decimated continents, ice ages that threatened to bury us, cataclysms that wiped out civilizations. She lifted a hand, tracing an invisible line in the air. Each time we were brought to the brink, each time we should have perished. By your logical, efficient standards, we should have. Yet, we endured, not just by surviving, but by evolving, by finding new ways, new strengths, in the very teeth of annihilation. Vorak 10 projected a series of data streams onto the hololithic, statistics on human mortality rates during historical pandemics, climate shifts, and internal conflicts. These events, while devastating, were contained. Localized. Your species always had a refuge, an untouched continent, a surviving population to rebuild from. We speak of galactic-scale extinction. And you believe that changes the fundamental principle? Selene countered, her eyes sparkling with an inner light that seemed almost defiant. You think that because the scale increases, our response changes? You misunderstand the core engine of humanity. It's not about the size of the threat, Commander. It's about the existence of the threat and our reaction to it. She took another step, drawing closer to the shimmering Drokar. When you tell us there's no hope, no way out, that is when humanity truly begins to innovate. When the odds are impossible, that's when we stop calculating odds. We don't just fight to win. We fight because we can. We fight because the alternative is to simply cease, and our biology, our very essence, screams against that. Vorak 10 remained silent, his complex eyes analyzing her, running countless algorithms on her biological responses, her linguistic patterns, searching for the telltale signs of deception or madness. He found none, only a profound, unnerving sincerity. "You speak of a biological imperative," Vorak 10 finally stated, his voice still low, but with a new edge of genuine intrigue. "All species possess a survival drive. Yours cannot be unique." "The manifestation of it is," Celine corrected gently. "Other species, when faced with overwhelming force, might disperse, go dormant, revert to a simpler state, or simply accept their fate. Humanity, we tend to double down. We are like a spring compressed to its absolute limit. The more pressure you apply, the more violently we recoil when released. Or perhaps we find a way to redirect that very pressure, to turn it into the force that propels us forward." She paused, looking directly into Vorak 10's four eyes. "You speak of ending us now, of shattering our star systems. You are capable of it, I have no doubt. But what you will be ending is not humanity. You will be ending the current iteration of humanity, and the next, one forged in the fires of your destruction, will be something you cannot possibly comprehend." A low murmur rippled through the Droker bridge, not of fear, but of an intellectual disturbance, like a ripple across a perfectly calm pond. One of the Droker operatives, a lesser-ranked tactician named Zorgath, projected a query onto a nearby panel, its holographic text shimmering. "Inconclusive data. Threat assessment anomalies. Recommend further observation." Vorak 10 dismissed the query with a flick of a manipulator. His gaze remained on Celine. "You speak in riddles, Terran. What specific, tangible threat could a shattered, decimated species pose to a hegemony that commands entire armadas?" Celine's smile broadened, this time with a hint of genuine amusement. "The threat of the unknown, Commander. The threat of an enemy that refuses to play by your rules. You see us as a single entity, easily contained or extinguished, but we are not. We are a billion distinct minds, each capable of unexpected genius, each capable of irrational bravery, each capable of holding a grudge that spans generations." She gestured around the bridge. "You have observed our technological progression. It is exponential, isn't it? Every time we hit a wall, we find a way over, under, or through it. And often the solutions we find are unorthodox. You predict our defeat based on current weapon yields. But what if, in the very act of defending ourselves against those yields, we develop something new? Something utterly outside your tactical projections?" Her voice lowered, becoming conspiratorial, yet still carrying across the vast bridge. "Consider this, Commander. Your hegemony has existed for cycles, perfecting its methods of conquest. You understand fear. You understand submission. You understand the logical progression of power. But what if we are a variable you cannot quantify, a force you cannot predict?" "You are speaking of a biological anomaly," Vorak 10 countered, his voice resonating with a deeper, more analytical tone now. The initial disdain was gone, replaced by a focused, almost clinical scrutiny. "A species whose fear response is somehow inverted, or perhaps nullified." "Neither," Celine replied. "Our fear response is intact. We feel terror, we feel dread, but we also feel something else, something you seem to lack, an almost perverse defiance, an inherent stubbornness that in the face of insurmountable odds simply says, 'No, not today, not ever.' It's not bravery born of a lack of fear, Commander. It's bravery born in spite of fear." She walked to the edge of the hololithic, reaching out a finger to lightly touch the projection of a burning earth. The image rippled under her touch. "You calculate millions of deaths, billions, but you don't calculate the fury that arises from such loss, the unified, unwavering resolve of those who survive to ensure it never happens again. You destroy our worlds and you don't create peace. You create an enemy that will dedicate every atom of its being, every ounce of its ingenuity, to understanding your weaknesses and exploiting them." A new projection shimmered on the hololithic, superimposed over the destroyed Earth. It showed a small, unassuming human cargo vessel, long thought lost in the vastness of space after a Droker scout ship had reported its destruction. Yet here it was, its signature faint, almost undetectable, but undeniably present, weaving through a particularly dense asteroid field far from any known jump lanes. "That vessel," Vorak 10's voice carried a hint of surprise, was designated destroyed. Its escape vector indicated complete system failure and atmospheric burnup. Our sensor logs confirmed. Ah, sensor logs, Celine mused, pulling her hand away from the projection. Rigid, empirical, very Drokar. But what if the data was interpreted? Or rather, what if our concept of destruction differs from yours? Her gaze met his. That particular vessel, the Stardust Wanderer, was carrying the last remaining archives of our pre-stellar age. History, philosophy, art, music, the very soul of humanity. It was supposed to be destroyed. Its destruction was, in fact, a crucial part of a contingency plan. A feint, to make you believe you had severed our roots, when in fact, we were merely transplanting them. A new wave of murmurs, louder this time, swept across the bridge. Zorgo's holographic query pulsed with urgency. Anomaly confirmed. Unidentified signal emanating from designated debris field. Pattern consistent with Terran data transmission highly encrypted. Vorak 10's multifaceted eyes narrowed, his posture rigid. You allowed a vessel of such significance to be targeted? A feint? What kind of species plays with its own history in such a reckless manner? A species that understands that history is not defined by its physical archives, Commander, but by the consciousness that carries it, Celine stated calmly. The Stardust Wanderer was a decoy, a calculated risk. Its true cargo wasn't the data, but the idea of escape, the hope of continuity, beamed to 1,000 different, tiny, hidden vessels. Each one designed to mimic a piece of space debris, a stray comet, a discarded asteroid fragment, each one carrying a sliver of our collective memory, our cultural heritage across the galaxy. The hololithic now showed not one faint signal, but hundreds, then thousands of almost imperceptible energy signatures, blooming like phosphorescent spores across the void. They were too small, too dispersed, too low energy to register as a conventional threat. But their sheer number, their ubiquity, was far more unsettling than any armada. These are data packets, Vorak 10 queried, his voice betraying genuine bafflement. Fragments of information scattered across the galactic arm. Not just information, Commander, Celine corrected. They are seeds, seeds of humanity. Each one contains not just our history, but the blueprints for our most advanced technologies, our scientific breakthroughs, our philosophical treatises on resilience. Each one is encoded with the instructions to find fertile ground, to replicate, to rebuild, to learn, adapt, and eventually to thrive. She gestured to the vast, star-strewn expanse outside the view screen. You can shatter Earth. You can vaporize Mars. You can even pursue and destroy every single one of those tiny data packets. But you will never truly eradicate us, because every time you destroy one, the others will have learned from its demise. They will have adapted. They will have found a new way to evade, to hide, to spread. This is a biological distributed defense mechanism, Vorak 10 mused, his voice losing its hum of authority and adopting a more analytical tone. A form of mimetic warfare on a galactic scale. Call it what you will, Celine replied, her eyes meeting his directly. We call it humanity. We don't just fight for survival. We fight for the right to become, to continue our story. And our story, Commander, is one of overcoming the impossible. It's written in every scar, every triumph, every illogical act of defiance against the inevitable. She took another slow, deliberate step towards Vorak 10 until she was standing directly before him, her head barely reaching his chest. You asked why I wasn't scared. I am. I am terrified of what you are capable of, Commander. I am terrified of the destruction you could unleash. But my fear, and the fear of my species, is not a paralytic. It is a catalyst. It drives us to think harder, to innovate faster, to push beyond what we believe are our limits. You speak of limits, Terran, Vorak 10 stated, a new, almost imperceptible tremor in his voice, a vibration of a previously unknown variable being introduced into his vast computational processes. Yet you seem to possess none. This distributed consciousness, this mimetic scattering, it is unprecedented. Precisely, Celine confirmed. You cannot conquer what you cannot contain. You cannot defeat what you cannot comprehend. You can burn our worlds, but you cannot burn our spirit. You can destroy our bodies, but you cannot destroy our will. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper that nonetheless resonated with profound weight. And here is the ultimate paradox, Commander. The more you try to crush us, the more resilient we become. The more you try to extinguish us, the brighter we burn. Because every act of aggression from you teaches us something new about how to overcome. Every threat you issue sharpens our resolve. The hololithic flickered again, and now, beside the scattered data packets, appeared a smaller, yet distinctly Droker energy signature. It was an older model scout vessel, one that had been designated lost centuries ago, presumably to a stellar flare or an asteroid collision. Yet its signal, previously dormant, was now active, and it was emitting a Droker distress beacon, weak but unmistakable. Vorak 10's four eyes widened, processing the data. That is impossible. That vessel was deep space salvage, its power core inert for millennia. Indeed, Celine affirmed, a knowing glint in her eyes. It was inert, until perhaps one of those data packets found it. Until a tiny, almost invisible, human-designed drone, powered by scavenged Drokar crystal energy, landed on its hull. Until a human, stranded and alone, found a way to reactivate its systems, not for escape, but for something more audacious. The distress beacon from the ancient Drokar scout vessel was no longer just a faint pulse. It was transmitting a message, a series of clicks and static, followed by a human voice, faint but clear, speaking in heavily accented but perfectly fluent Drokar. The voice belonged to a renowned xenolinguist, Professor Eris Thorne, who had been aboard the Stardust Wanderer and presumed lost. Commander Vorak 10. Eris's voice crackled through the bridge's comms, translated simultaneously by the Drokar Universal Translator. This is Professor Eris Thorne, formerly of the Terran Confederacy. I am currently occupying your derelict scout vessel, designation KS-713. My apologies for the intrusion. We merely required a suitable platform for a direct communication. Silence descended upon the bridge, heavier than before. The Drokar bridge crew, for the first time, turned their heads, their multifaceted eyes fixing on the human standing before their commander. Professor Thorne, Vorak 10 rumbled, his voice strained. You were designated deceased, your vessel disintegrated. Per your sensor readings, yes, Eris's voice replied, a hint of dry amusement now present. But as Ambassador Kale has no doubt explained, human disintegration is often just a prelude to reinvention. We simply redistributed ourselves, and in doing so, we found some interesting things, like your long-lost scout vessel. Fascinating engineering, by the way. A bit clunky for long range, but remarkably robust. A new visual flickered onto the hololithic, directly from KS-713. It wasn't the interior of the scout vessel, but a view from its primary sensor array. And what it showed was not the vast emptiness of space, but a dense, almost chaotic cluster of human-designed drones. They were tiny, barely visible against the starfield, but their numbers were staggering. And they were swarming around the ancient Drokar scout, not damaging it, but modifying it. Small, almost invisible tendrils of energy generated by the drones were weaving around the derelict scout, connecting to its hull, tapping into its dormant systems. The scout's distress beacon was growing stronger, no longer a desperate plea, but a powerful focus signal. What is the meaning of this, Terran? Vorak 10 demanded, his voice returning to its resonant growl, but now laced with a new dangerous edge of genuine anger and confusion. The meaning, Commander, Celine said, her voice now calm, authoritative, like a teacher explaining a complex concept to a struggling student, is that we adapt. You sent scout ships to observe our primitive technology. We sent out data packets to observe your advanced derelicts. You thought you were hunting prey. We were gathering intelligence. The hololithic projection from KS-713 shifted again. The swarm of drones had now completely enveloped the scout vessel, obscuring it from view. Then, slowly, they began to peel away, revealing the scout vessel transformed. Its dull, ancient hull now gleamed with an unfamiliar energy. New, sleek conduits pulsed with internal light. Its weapon emplacements, previously rusted and fused, now glowed with an ominous violet light. And its warp core, once dead, was spinning up, its power signature skyrocketing beyond anything a vessel of its class should have been capable of. "We found a way to reverse engineer your crystal energy matrix," Celine explained, a genuine smile now gracing her lips. "Not by studying your active vessels, which are too well defended, but by studying your failures, your discarded technology. We learned to make the dead hum with life again. And then we learned to make that life sing our song." Eris Thorne's voice returned, stronger now, clearer, filled with a triumphant conviction. "Commander Vorak 10, we are now transmitting a single, unified signal across the Drokar subspace network. It carries not a threat but a message. A lesson, perhaps. It's a simulation, a projection of what would happen if your hegemony were to engage humanity in a full-scale, genocidal war." The hololithic on the Devourer of Stars expanded, filling the entire bridge with the projected simulation. It wasn't a battle of ships, but a battle of minds. It showed Drokar fleets, initially triumphant, smashing through human defenses. But with every victory, the human data packets would proliferate, infecting Drokar logistics networks, subverting their automated defenses, even subtly altering their ships' navigational data. The simulation showed Drokar ships, after annihilating human worlds, returning to their home systems, only to find their own automated defenses turned against them, their resource processing plants repurposed to generate human-aligned drones, their internal networks subtly infiltrated by mimetic viruses that slowly, inexorably, sowed discord and doubt among their highly logical, efficient populace. It wasn't a swift, brutal war. It was a slow, insidious, systemic breakdown. The Drokar, used to direct confrontation, found themselves battling a phantom enemy that refused to coalesce, that adapted to every countermeasure, that turned their own strengths into weaknesses. The simulation ended not with explosions, but with the Drokar hegemony, still powerful in theory, fragmented and internally conflicted, unable to effectively govern or project power due to the pervasive, unquantifiable human element that had seeped into every crevice of their empire. Vorak 10 watched the simulation with an expression Celine had never seen on a Drokar face. A mixture of profound shock, dawning comprehension, and something akin to existential horror. Their entire philosophy of conquest, their logical framework of dominance, was being dismantled before his eyes, not by superior firepower, but by an utterly alien, human form of resilience. This is illogical," Vorak 10 finally managed, his voice a low, raspy whisper. "This violates every principle of warfare, every known strategy of subjugation." "It violates your principles, Commander," Celine corrected him, her voice firm, resolute. "Not ours. We don't fight fair, by your rules. We fight to survive, and sometimes survival means playing a different game entirely." "We could still end you," Vorak 10 repeated, but the conviction was gone, replaced by a hollow echo. The words now felt like a desperate assertion, not a confident threat. Celine smiled, a full, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Yes, you could. You could burn everything. But what would you gain? A galaxy of ash forever haunted by the specter of a species that refused to lie down and die. A galaxy where every derelict vessel, every stray energy signature, every flickering star might be a hidden seed of humanity, waiting to sprout anew. You would trade your dominion for an eternal, unwinnable war against a ghost." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. The Drokar bridge was utterly silent now, the low hum of the ship the only sound. Even the background operations had ceased. All eyes, all senses were focused on the human. "Or," Celine continued, her voice offering an alternative, a path she had been laying since the moment she stepped onto their bridge. "You could choose a different path. You could acknowledge that there are forces in the universe that do not fit into your rigid classifications, that perhaps cooperation, understanding, even symbiosis might lead to a more stable, more prosperous galaxy for all species, Drokar included." Vorak 10's gaze dropped from Celine to the flickering, unsettling simulation on the hololithic. He saw the slow decay of his hegemony, not through force but through infiltration, through the relentless, insidious ingenuity of a species that thrived on adversity. He saw his people, logical and efficient, becoming paralyzed by the unpredictable, by the emotional, by the utterly human. We do not negotiate with threats, Vorak 10 stated, but it was a rote recitation, devoid of its usual authority. "This isn't a threat, Commander," Celine countered softly. "This is a fact, a biological reality. You asked why we weren't scared, because we know what we are. We are the survivors. We are the adapters. We are the ones who, when told there is no hope, simply invent it. And we know that while you can destroy our ships, our cities, our planets, you cannot destroy the spark that makes us human." She looked around the bridge, at the silent Drakkar warriors, their faces impassive, but their internal systems no doubt screaming with unprecedented data. "You have spent millennia conquering through force, but there are some things force cannot conquer. The human will, Commander, is one of them. We will bend, we will break, we will bleed, but we will never truly shatter. And in the very act of trying to shatter us, you will only reveal our true strength." Vorak 10 lifted a segmented manipulator, rubbing his elongated jawline. He was calculating, processing, but not in the logical, predictable manner of his species. He was trying to grasp an illogical truth, a truth that defied every axiom of Drakkar existence. "Send Ambassador Kaal to observation chambers," Vorak 10 finally rumbled, his voice low, but carrying a new note, not of command, but of inquiry. "And secure the perimeter of the KS-713. Do not engage. Monitor all transmissions. I wish to understand." As two Drakkar guards, their movements surprisingly gentle, guided Celine away from the command hololithic, she glanced back at Vorak 10. He was still standing there, staring at the unsettling simulation, his four eyes alight with a turbulent internal conflict. The question had been asked, and the answer, though not simple, had been given. Celine Kaal walked from the bridge of the Devourer of Stars, not as a prisoner, but as a messenger. She had brought not fear, but a seed of doubt. And for a species as ancient and logical as the Drakkar, doubt was often far more terrifying than any weapon. The hegemony had met humanity, and humanity, against all logic, was not scared.